Okay, so let's talk about something that can really bake your noodle. Have you ever thought about how an unchanging, eternal God could become a man? I mean, it sounds like a paradox, right? Well, today we're going to see if we can unravel it together. Let's dive in.
Right off the bat, you can see the problem, can't you? In one column, you've got the Old Testament describing God. He's not a man. He doesn't change. He knows everything. But then you look at the other column, which is all about Jesus in the New Testament. He's clearly a man, calls himself the Son of Man, and seemed to learn and grow. It looks like a flat-out contradiction. So what gives?
And this really is the core of it, the main objection. How can a being that is eternal, that is literally unchangeable, suddenly become a finite mortal human being? It's a huge legitimate question that has been debated for centuries, and it's the exact puzzle we're digging into right now.
So let's just lay out the argument nice and clear. Point 1. The Old Testament says God is not a man. Point 2. The New Testament is very clear that Jesus is a man. Point 3. God is unchanging. Point 4. Jesus very obviously changed. He grew up, he learned things. You stack all that up and, well, the conclusion seems obvious. It's a contradiction. Case closed. Or is it?
Well, the answer to this whole puzzle hangs on one single powerful idea. It's like a master key that unlocks the entire thing. And that key is the concept of two natures.
The fancy theological term for this is the hypostatic union. Now I know that sounds super complicated, but stick with me, because the idea itself is really elegant. Think of it like a coin. A coin is one single object, right? But it has two totally distinct sides, heads and tails. In the same way, Christian theology says Jesus is one single person, but he possesses two complete and distinct natures, one that is fully God and one that is fully human. He's not 50-50, he's 100-100, both at the same time.
And you know, this isn't some new idea they just cooked up. The nature of Christ was probably the hottest topic of debate for centuries in the early church. It all culminated in the year 451 AD at the Council of Chalcedon. It was there that this idea, the hypostatic union, was officially hammered out and affirmed as the Orthodox Christian belief.
So what does this actually look like? Well, on one side, you have Jesus as the eternal Son of God. That's his divine nature, and it is unchanging, all-knowing, all-powerful. It never changed. But then, at a specific point in history, he also took on a complete human nature. That means a human body, a human mind, a human soul. And through that nature, he experienced everything it means to be human: growth, learning, hunger, sadness, and even death.
Okay, so now we have our key, this idea of two distinct natures in one person. Let's go back to those original objections we started with and see if this key actually fits the lock.
Let's start with that first big one, the verse where God says, "I am God and not a man." I mean, on the surface, that seems pretty cut and dried. It looks like a direct prohibition, doesn't it?
But here's the thing. Context is everything. When you read these passages, you realize they aren't about metaphysics. They aren't a rule book about what God can and cannot become. They're about character. God is contrasting his incredible, unwavering faithfulness with our human tendency to be, well, sinful and unreliable. It's a moral contrast, not a physical one.
Okay, but what about the big one? The one that feels like the ultimate showstopper? For I, the Lord, do not change. How can you possibly get around that? If God became a man, that seems like a pretty massive change, right?
And again, it all comes down to the context. This isn't some dry philosophical statement. It's a passionate, fiery promise God is making to the people of Israel. He's basically saying, the reason you all haven't been completely destroyed is because I don't change my mind. My promises to you are rock solid. So the thing that is unchanging here isn't some static state of being, it's his covenant faithfulness. It's his promise.
You see how that shifts everything? Suddenly we're not talking about a philosophical problem anymore. We're talking about a promise. And that opens up an even more profound question. Why would a God who is completely free choose to bind himself with a promise to begin with?
And this is just a beautiful paradox, isn't it? Think about it. A perfectly free God doesn't need a relationship with anyone or anything. He's totally self-sufficient. So the fact that he chooses to enter into a binding covenant with humanity can only be one thing, a pure act of grace. He freely chooses to limit his own options for our sake, to give us security.
And the Bible shows us just how seriously God takes these promises. I mean, when people make a really serious promise, they swear an oath on something greater than themselves, right? So what does God swear on? The book of Hebrews gives this incredible answer. Since there was no one greater for him to swear by, he swore by himself. He literally put his own unchangeable nature on the line as the guarantee. So here's the logic. First, God freely chooses to make a promise. Second, to show he's dead serious, he adds an oath, swearing on the one thing that can't change, himself. What's the result? You now have two unchangeable things, the promise itself and the oath that guarantees it. And the whole purpose of all this? To give us, as human beings, absolute, unshakable stability and security.
So, where does all this leave us? Well, we started with what looked like an impossible contradiction. But as we've unwrapped it, it turns into something else entirely. It's not a contradiction, it's the ultimate fulfillment of a covenant.
So let's just nail down the main takeaways. That big paradox we started with gets resolved by this idea of Christ's two natures, the hypostatic union. Those Old Testament verses about God not changing, they're almost always talking about his faithful character, not setting some kind of physical limit. So the Incarnation isn't a change in God's divine nature, it's the incredible addition of a human nature. And that act becomes the ultimate proof of his unchanging, faithful promises.
And that just leaves us with one final incredible thought to chew on. If the Incarnation isn't a contradiction, but is actually God's ultimate promise, what does it mean for a promise to become a person? That's a profound idea, and I hope this has given you a fresh way to think about one of theology's greatest mysteries. Thanks for joining me.